In my lifetime, I've ridden a total of 180 different roller coasters. So today I'll be ranking up my top 25. We have 25 coasters to get through, so let's just kick off the list with number 25, Goliath at Six Flags Great America. This may not be the longest RMC out there, but it certainly packs a punch for what it has. There's an amazing first drop going down into the tunnel, and then an amazing stall and dive loop, which also give a ton of hang time and some airtime if you're in the back row. You also have two very strong and punchy airtime hills. At the number 24 spot is Hagrid's Magical Creatures Motorbike Adventure at Universal's Islands of Adventure, and yes, I just said that entire name in one take. This ride itself doesn't have much to it, but the entire experience itself is amazing. You have 7 launches and a ton of theming moments, and even some surprises along the way. At the number 23 spot is Alpengeist at Busch Gardens Williamsburg. This ride used to be not even in my top 25 or even close to it, but my rides this year definitely elevated it. The first drop in the back row whips you over and is probably the best drop on an inverted coaster. You also have punchy elements like the Edelman vertical loop and especially that Cobra wall, which may whip you around a bit, but it is a very intense element. The second half isn't the best, but if you get a good ride where the mid-course doesn't hit too hard, it's still a good experience. At the number 22 spot is Mr. Freeze Reverse Blast at Six Flags St. Louis. This is a very intense launch coaster. I think it pulls up to like 5.5 Gs in some spots, which is absolutely crazy. The backwards LIM launch to start off the ride isn't the most punchy, but it is pretty good still. You also have that inverted top hat which will whip you around it, and an overbank that doesn't do too much. However, the spike with the boosters on it is absolutely amazing, as you actually get a ton of hang time going through it. And then you do the whole course forwards, with a little bit less speed, but still an amazing ride. At the number 21 spot is Magnum XL 200 at Cedar Point. This ride is very polarizing in the coaster community, and I think this ride is absolutely amazing, including this final run of Airtime Triangle Hills, which absolutely eject you out of your seat even though they do hurt your thighs a little bit. Otherwise, the ride gives good airtime in most rows, and the Magic Seat especially is amazing. At the number 20 spot is Montu at Busch Gardens Tampa. This is my highest strength inverted coaster for a reason. The inversions are very tight and whippy, and you also have that Batwing which absolutely whips you around, and there's trenches and inversions in those trenches in the second half of the ride. At the number 19 spot is the only SB&O coaster on this list, Top Thrill Dragster at Cedar Point. The launch on that coaster was an absolute adrenaline rush, and you could not breathe for a few seconds until you were going up the top hat. Speaking of the top hat, if you go over and you have a lot of wiggle room with your restraint, you're going to be absolutely flung out of your seat, and the drop itself is a little bit killed by the 270-degree spiral, but it's still very good. All of that leads to an absolute adrenaline rush of a coaster, even though it's 17 seconds long. At the number 18 spot is Stormwinder at Hershey Park. This coaster is pretty much Top Thrill Dragster, but not as fast, and it has an extended layout. The hydraulic launch is just the same as Dragster, except you don't get the take your breath away feeling. You also have an amazing top hat, an okay Cobra loop, and then an amazing flying snake dive where you get flung out of your seat in every row and whipped around by those inversions. After that, it's pretty much a short ride still, but it's still great for what it is. At the number 17 spot is Time Traveler at Silver Dollar City. This is my favorite coaster, not to be confused with my number 1 coaster though. I can talk about this ride for minutes at a time, almost hours, as there's so much to say about it, but let's just talk about the basics. The first drop while you're spinning in the back row is crazy, and the inversions also taken while spinning are pretty good. You also have those launches which are weak because they're mock launches, but other than that, it's an insane ride experience to take while you're spinning, and a great coaster. At the number 16 spot is Millennium Force at Cedar Point. This coaster has dropped recently in my rankings, although it's still an amazing ride. You have the amazing 310-foot first drop in the back row. Also, when you're on the lift hill, you get amazing views of Lake Erie and the rest of Cedar Point. The first overbank also makes you gray out at times, but other than that, the rest of the ride is filled with airtime hills and low to the ground transitions, which make the ride still really fun. Kicking off the top 15 is Mystic Timbers at Kings Island, a GCI wooden coaster, and this is my highest ranked GCI wooden coaster because it's frankly airtime heaven. Most of the sections of the ride are just airtime hills, combined with a few turns and including the first drop that give off some laterals, and you have an amazing GCI. At the number 14 spot is Storm Chaser at Kentucky Kingdom. This is a very punchy and intense RMC coaster. The first barrel roll drop is pretty good, but you have camelbacks after that which absolutely eject you out of your seat. You have a few overbanks which make it a little bit unique compared to other RMCs, and a few inversions before going into more airtime hills, and a trick track double up, which is absolutely amazing. You also have a helix towards the end of the ride, which is kind of weird for an RMC, but it gives off some good forces, and I like it. At the number 13 spot is Intimidator 305 at King's Dominion. A lot of people put this in their top 10, and even 5, but I think the ride is a little too intense heavy, and there's nothing else to it. You have the first drop, which is absolutely amazing, and the first turn, which will guarantee a gray out, and possibly even a blackout, and then a good airtime hill, which will give some pretty strong floater, and then you have turns that are very snappy, and then more turns, and an airtime hill, which is killed by trims, and then more turns into the brake run. I just described the entire ride of Intimidator 305. It's not my type of ride though, but I still like it. At the number 12 spot is Diamondback at Kings Island. Take Intimidator at Carowinds and remove half the trims, and then you have this ride. And it does it so well. The airtime is absolutely amazing in every row, you get a ton of floater on the hills, and it has a little bit of variety with that helix, the splashdown, and a few actually decent turns. At the number 11 spot is Outlaw Run at Silver Dollar City. This is a very good RMC wooden coaster. In fact, it's my highest ranked wooden coaster, even though it's not the most traditional wooden coaster out there. You have an amazing first drop in the back row, partially because of that pre-drop and bunny dip that give you a lot of speed going into it. You also have a few good inversions, including that double barrel roll finale, which is absolutely amazing and gives you great hang time. Also, this ride can be a little rough at times, so make sure to sit in row 11, which is not on a wheel seat for the best experience. Kicking off the top 10 is Mako at SeaWorld Orlando, and this is my highest ranked B&M hypercoaster. First of all, you have an amazing first drop in the back row, and some very good moments of airtime, including that 5-second floater hill. And almost none of the hills on this ride are trimmed, so you can get the full potential of the airtime. You also have a great speed hill going into the mid-course brake run, and the second half isn't the best, but I still appreciate the effort going around the plaza and going right by the water. At the number 9 spot is Twisted Timbers at King's Dominion. This is a mini Steel Vengeance type ride, where it's just airtime moment after airtime moment. You also have that great first drop, which is a barrel roll and inverts you, and then you get some pretty good upside down airtime and quite a bit of hang time in the front row. After that, it's pretty much airtime heaven, with the triple camelback, trick track double up, and much more great moments of airtime. At the number 8 spot is Pantheon at Busch Gardens Williamsburg. This ride definitely lived up to the hype that was surrounded around it. The first inversion gives quite a bit of hang time and a little bit of airtime going out of it. And the swing launch portion gives you some amazing airtime on that one airtime hill while going over the launch. You also have that great vertical spike, which in the back row feels like you're going to fly off the track. You also have the great second half, filled with moments of ejector airtime, and the great hang time moment that is the 0G stall. Along with that, you have the near miss with the drop, going through some of the S-turns, and a wave turn to end off the ride. Truly amazing. Intamin did a great job with this ride. At the number 7 spot is Skyrush at Hershey Park. This ride is ejector airtime heaven. You have that crazy first drop in the back row which flings you over it, especially with the cable lift hill as you're going up that lift hill incredibly fast. You also have very good ejector moments throughout the ride. Just make sure you don't staple yourself in the station so your thighs don't get crushed. Well, the restraint will go down on you later in the ride, but just try to get the most room possible. At the number 6 spot is Maverick at Cedar Point. This is a jack-of-all-trades coaster. It's almost like Copperhead Strike but enhanced. You have the great launch lift hill at the beginning of the ride into a 95-degree drop which will whip you in the back row. You have some S-turns and then an absolutely crazy camelback hill before going into 2 okay inversions. Then you have the launch into the tunnel, which is absolutely insane. You go out into some high-speed turns and go over the water into more S-turns, and then you have the 2 stangle dives, which will snap you violently and give off laterals and forces. Overall, a great coaster. Kicking off the top 5 is Lightning Rod at Dollywood. I don't have much more to say about this coaster than wow, is this ride amazing. First of all, it interacts with the terrain at almost every point, from when you're going up the launch lift hill at the start to the very end quad down when you're going down the side of the hill. You have the amazing launch lift hill along with the pre-drop which will build up speed for the main drop, and the twist and shout gives a ton of airtime. Not to mention the quad down itself is absolutely insane, giving 4 back-to-back ejector moments. What an amazing ride. At the number 4 spot is Jurassic World Velocicoaster at Universal's Islands of Adventure. What an incredible ride this is. It's a jack-of-all-trades coaster, and along with that, it's a full experience with the theming. The first 2 inversions give some good hang time and quite a bit of airtime, and the entire first half is really spent going through elaborate rockwork designs. But the second half is spent launching out of a tunnel into an amazing top hat, which will give a ton of airtime in the back row, going over a stall, more overbanks and outer banks, before going over probably the best inversion of all time, the Mosasaurus roll, which will absolutely eject you in some ways. It gives off a ton of laterals too. This is a crazy ride. Taking the bronze is Fury 325 at Carowinds. This ride is an absolute speed demon. From the first drop, which is absolutely insane, it feels like you're falling into an infinite void, to the high-speed whippy bank turns, going over the pathways of the park. You have amazing moments from start to finish, including that treble clef, which will absolutely eject you out of your seat. Along with that, you have a pretty good near-miss moment in the second half with that helix, and 2 amazing airtime hills to end off the ride. Taking the silver medal is Steel Vengeance at Cedar Point. This coaster used to be my number 1 for a very long time, and just a few months ago it got dethroned, but it's still an amazing ride for what it is. You have moments of airtime that I can't even describe because they're so good. And a little bit of variety mixed in with some inversions and some overbank turns. Overall, I really can't describe Steel Vengeance because it's so insane. You just have to go out to Cedar Point and ride it yourself. And finally, taking the gold medal as my number 1 coaster this year is Iron Gwazi at Busch Gardens Tampa. What an amazing ride. It takes everything that Steel Vengeance does and makes it 20 times better. Maybe not 20 times better, but it makes it better in most ways. The first drop in the back row is great, and you definitely feel that extra degree for some reason. And that first overbank and outer bank turn is crazy too. You also have the death roll, which is a bit overhyped, but still amazing. And that insane outer bank going over the station. Along with that, you have great second half filled with airtime and a 0G stall, and add that all together and you have a number 1 worthy coaster. That's gonna do it for my top 25 coasters. If you enjoyed, make sure to like and subscribe, and comment down below all of the opinions you disagreed with in this video. This is 0G Coaster signing out. Have a great rest of your day, and see you guys.